Hi, I'm Mike McGann from the Times of Chester County, and welcome to Chester County Conversations. This is our first edition of what we hope will be many. Joining me today is former Chester County Commissioner Kathi Cozzone, and we're at the Uwchlan
Ambulance Corps.
Yeah. Okay. I managed to get lost, so don't blame me. Actually, I was sitting in a parking lot. Anyway, we're going to be talking about EMS issues and maybe catching up a little with our former county commissioner. Kathi, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me. I am very excited to have been named the executive director of Uwchlan Ambulance about just over a year ago. Prior to that, I was on the board here for almost 12 years. So even though I'm not a provider, although I'm potentially working on that, I have a really good, well-rounded knowledge. And of course, my life before commissioner was in finance and accounting. Right. So I've been excited about this job. Mm-hmm. However, this agency, like every agency in Chester County and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is experiencing significant financial challenges, right, primarily because of rising costs and lower reimbursements, mostly due to Medicare and Medicaid. So we can balance bill our private pay insured, but we cannot do that with Medicare and Medicaid unless the patient happens to have a plan that has a copay or co-insurance. Right. So, we might bill $1,100 for a basic life support call. Our average return on all our bills is about $590. So an ALS call, which would be like a coronary event or respiratory event, we might bill almost double that. Right. A BLS call, basic life support, break your leg, break your arm, and then we have some treat without transports, primarily lift assists. People might fall and they need us to help get them up. Those we charge a minimal amount for, but therein lies the problem. Further, while municipalities in Pennsylvania are required to provide emergency services at the local level, up until probably about 3 or 4 years ago, most ambulance agencies were self-sustainable because you could bill. Sure. That is no longer the case because obviously the receipts don't equal the expenses. Right. Expenses continue to rise. Most of our expenses are payroll and equipment. Right, so we have a stretcher back here that is about $25,000. We have 6 of them. We have 6 ambulances. Right. A new ambulance right now is probably about $250,000. If we ordered one today, we wouldn't see it for 2 years. Right. So in the meantime, we're going to limp along, spending a lot of money on repairs for the ambulances we currently have to keep them in service.
Put a ton of mileage on them. People don't realize how often they're in service.
And interestingly, you bring up mileage because we get paid $14 per loaded mile. So what that means is we don't get paid for mileage unless there is a patient in the back of the ambulance. So our mileage to a location and returning from the hospital or the location is not covered. Mm-hmm. So it's a very challenging model. This was recognized actually quite a while ago. In fact, the County Commissioners Association in 2019, when I was president, created the EMS task force. At the same time, the Senate was working on SR 6, which was to be a plan on how to address the issue. Right. So far, nothing has come to fruition. Yeah. It saddens me, but it almost doesn't surprise me because, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there was SR 60, which primarily focused on the fire service, but also very little came out of that as well. There are very limited opportunities for grants. So, for example, we get one grant from the Office of the State Fire Commissioner, again, the Fire Commissioner, a year. It's generally used for debt reduction. And up until recently, we carried very little debt. But that's about to change. Yes. We got $8,000 this year from that, around the same 7, 8 the year before. I think a couple years ago we got maybe 10 or 15. But that's very little from the state. FEMA's interesting. FEMA is this year expected to give out, I just got to check my numbers here, $414 million in grants. And they got an additional $90 million through the rescue plan money, right? So that's over $500 million. Only 2% of that will end up in EMS agencies across the entire United States of America. Part of the problem is, and you probably notice this in Chester County, a lot of the ambulances or EMS agencies are embedded with the fire service.
Right, like Longwood and
Right.
some of the other places.
So they get what they get from the fire service, which makes us standalone agencies. We have to compete even harder, right? Because we're not embedded with a fire service. So, on the one hand, we're not at the decision doesn't come down to, if I'm the leadership of the fire service, where do I need to spend my money?
Right.
But it leaves less money for us.
Well, and all the fire companies are struggling as well.
The fire companies
So
are
this is
absolutely
a
struggling.
more global problem in terms of the Commonwealth.
Well, sure it is. Although I will say that, and we are doing a really good job educating our township officials. This is new to them. Having to provide significant funding for EMS is very new. So I have been out, I started last year, and this year I have met with 6 of our 8 municipalities that we cover so far and sort of laid out where we're at, what our future looks like, and where we need their help. But having been an elected official myself, I completely understand that what has basically happened is the federal and state government has kind of put this all on the backs of local government.
Right.
Where outside of the earned income tax, if you're charging that, you're also talking, again, about putting the burden on property tax.
Yep.
So while we're having this conversation in Pennsylvania about the burden of property tax on our senior citizens, the problem is the federal and state government continually pushes more and more down. So, so we've recognized that we have a responsibility to try to find additional funding. So about a year and a half ago, we hired a part-time development director and she's been great because she's helped us secure grants that we wouldn't have had the time to write the grant for instance, a FEMA grant,
Sure.
which is very complicated,
Oh, yeah.
very time consuming. We applied this year, I think, for $165,000, and I don't know. I don't know whether we'll see any or or all of that.
But that just papers over what is a structural problem.
It is a structural problem because it's about reimbursements.
Right.
And
now, in terms of, because you can, if somebody has IBX, you can then balance bill them, just so people don't have a better understanding of this and say, IBX gives you $600. Well, you can live with that because you can bill the other $500
absolutely,
to the
we
patient.
can balance bill the patient, right?
So, and there has been some legislation wanting to stop that.
That is, so we have, and when I say we, I mean the sort of greater United States EMS agencies have been lobbying to exclude us from the surprise billing legislation.
Yeah.
So, as a human being, I understand the concept, right? But in the emergency service world, like, if you're unconscious, I can't ask you where you want to go or who's in your network, or right? Like, I have to, and by law, under certain circumstances, I have to take you to a certain place. So that is through no fault of ours. It's the situation. It's called emergency medicine. And I would say that same goes for hospital ERs, right? They get a patient, they're required to treat them.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They're not going to ask that patient,
Nope.
Does your insurance pay for this? Right?
Although sometimes, if you're conscious, that they're very quick to want your insurance
I don't want to talk about hospitals, but the reality is that we partner well with our hospitals, right?
Right.
And they're under very similar circumstances in that if I'm unconscious, you're going to take care of me. My medic's going to take care of me. The ER staff is going to take care of me.
Right.
I may not be able to afford it, but it's not a surprise bill.
And
It's just what it costs.
And hospitals and other providers have some of the same issues in that the state Medicaid reimbursements are horrifically bad, and that is an issue of the state, not the federal government. Medicare is not great, and then private insurance, they don't get to balance bill. It's legal to balance bill.
Yes.
So they are stuck in what we have seen with the closure of Phoenixville and Jennersville. Not Phoenixville, I'm sorry, Brandywine and
Jennersville.
See, no edits.
You're going to regret that rule.
No, I'm not. With the closures of those two hospitals, and obviously the sale deal fell through the other day, these hospitals are barely scraping by too. So we have a massive structural problem, just like we have with schools and public safety. If you look at what money's getting yanked out of the road fund to pay for the state police for all the municipalities that don't have local police coverage, this is just kind of crazy the way Pennsylvania does it.
Well, yes. I'm just going to say yes to that.
Well, there is such an aggressive reluctance to ever raise taxes or find other revenue that it has eroded the state's ability to perform its basic functions.
I completely agree. And I think that it's also, property tax is one of the most regressive, right? And so yes. Pennsylvania has a huge population of seniors. Why it should, frankly, be a bipartisan issue to not put so much weight on the property tax or not keep adding to it, right? So while there's bills around the Property Tax Elimination Act, for example, that doesn't solve the challenges that all these services face, right?
Also throws the baby out with the bathwater. It's
right.
too extreme. I would assume that the idea would be to go back to a funding model of the late 70s, early 80s, where schools and everything else were half paid for, maybe, or a third paid for by property taxes.
It was half. I think under Rendell, right before Rendell, it was half, because one of his initiatives was to bring that back up to half. I think
I think 31. I think it's 30 or 31% in terms of schools. I know those numbers, and it used to be in the early 80s. It was more than half on average in terms of school funding, and public safety. They didn't have to loot the road fund to pay for the state police. But, of course, coverage was less, demands were less, vehicles were less, everything was less expensive. And, of course, the legal mandates from the federal government, from the state, and so on, have made everything much more expensive and complicated. It's just, I'm not sure how you rewire the state to solve all these problems globally. You, as a former commissioner, you ran for lieutenant governor, you have a sense of this. Is there a solution?
So in all honesty, I don't think there is a single solution, right? It's a multitude of solutions. I think our entire philosophy of how we pay for things in Pennsylvania, pay for anything, has to be readdressed. Right. County government for a long time had been advocating for another taxing opportunity because all we had was the property tax. We don't, and then fee for service. It was the Transportation Act 80, I guess it was. We got to add $5 to the registration fee so we could fix our bridges.
Yes.
But those are all just Band-Aids, right? So I think, I don't know that there is a short-term will of the people to fix it. But I will tell you that when people have to start paying for things out of their own pocket, be it through, a toll, because I heard there's potentially more tolls, or an ambulance bill, or they have to start paying more to fully fund the fire service and the EMS service. I think that's when we as citizens of the state of Pennsylvania or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania will figure out that we need to do something. It isn't an easy fix.
Right.
All of this was designed by William Penn. Hasn't changed very much since then.
It seems like it's a matter for all this of risk transference. In other words, spreading it out over a large base and everybody pays $20, or you roll the dice and maybe you're going to pay $1,000. It sort of seems to be, and everybody seems to think they're going to beat the odds. So is that a citizenry mindset? Is it something that the political bodies have said, we're never going to raise taxes on you. I'm sort of confused because other states sort of have different mentalities.
So I think it's a little bit of both, and I'll tell you why. So in our case, we very often get confused with being township employees. First, because our name is Uwchlan Ambulance.
Sure.
But I will tell you that other standalone agencies have experienced the same thing without having a name that's associated with any particular municipality. People in Pennsylvania don't know how these things are paid for, right? So that's part of the problem. And that's why I said when it gets down to the place where the taxpayers are going to have to foot more and more of these bills is when they'll finally start to see we're making a huge effort in trying to educate the residents, over 65,000 residents in our service area.
Right.
But it's difficult. I mean, we'll have people to say, oh, I love you township employees, you know, when you pick somebody up. I'm sorry, we don't work for the township. You know, and the other thing is, you know, the wages that these folks get paid, right? So when we talk about our costs, we can't control our revenue.
Right.
We get the calls we get.
Mm-hmm.
We bill what we can bill. We get paid what we can get paid, right?
Correct.
And we have a pretty good collection rate on the private insurance side, so that's not an issue for us. You know, ambulance, medication, equipment, it all costs what it costs.
Yeah.
My research tells me that there are sort of two major players in the equipment space, and one is primarily a West Coast and one is primarily an East
So
Coast.
it's an effective monopoly.
So you can't, you know, I mean, we have a good product, but you can't bid it because there's no competition. So the cost is what the cost is. In fact, we accelerated some purchasing this year because we were about to face a 7% price increase from the supplier of our stretchers and power loads and Lucas devices and monitors and but when you think about pay, and there's a lot of conversation now about, you know, raising the minimum wage to $15, just so you understand, our starting EMTs started $18. Our starting paramedics started $26. Wow. And if you're an AEMT, we're at, I think it was $21.50, $22.50, I can't remember because we just changed that recently. So, and an AEMT, by the way, is somewhere, but is not quite a paramedic, but they can actually do more in the field than an EMT.
So it'd be like an advanced EMT.
It's advanced EMT,
Okay.
AEMT, right? Okay. That's what it is. And by the way, our paramedics in the field can do more than a nurse can do in a hospital. So, you know, and our folks between, and the stuff that they see, we have a lot of mental health issues. People need to go away for a while to sort of straighten themselves out. There's some PTSD. And for $18 an hour.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're putting and most of them, even in our organization, have one full-time job and two part-time jobs. Wow. So even though our current rotation, which will probably change right now, is 7 days on, 7 days off, that other 7 days, they're not really off. They're going to go work somewhere else. So this industry doesn't even pay a sustaining wage.
Yeah.
I would love to pay them what they're worth, but I can't afford.
Sure.
You know, I'm losing money as it is. Our loss last year was about $130,000. We're looking at maybe $200,000 this year, and my capital needs in the next 5 years are $1.5 million.
So clearly we're looking at an unsustainable model.
Absolutely, and it's not just us.
No.
If you ask any other EMS agency, they'll tell you the same thing.
Right.
And, you know, what I've been telling our townships is, you know, if I have no doubt that we're going to figure out how to stay in business, right? That's going to happen. But, you know, if the township decided, well, we'll just pass a resolution to pick up another agency, my response has been, but you need the same number of people, the same amount of equipment.
Won't be any cheaper.
It's not,
Yeah.
There is no other agency that's not in the same position as we are.
Right.
This is an issue that's greater than Uwchlan. It's greater than Chester County. And frankly, it's greater than the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania because this is something you're seeing across the entire United States. So if you follow the American Ambulance Association at all, you'll see everybody's facing the same problems. And honestly, rural areas have it much worse because as we have a really hard time finding providers, so we have open spots all the time. Can you imagine in a rural area? So, in some of those places, they're looking at response times of 20 minutes to a half an hour.
Yeah.
So this is a challenge that's bigger than us, and I think really only as a community can we solve it.
Right. Is it hard to get attention with so much overhead, with everything going on from COVID to world events to the economy? How do you get traction in terms of pitching this both to the township officials, but the people they answer to, who are going to be mad if their local taxes go up,
Right.
if they don't understand why? How do you break through that?
So first of all, we have an annual subscription drive, which is the second biggest piece of our revenue. So we bring in about $330,000 from that. And what that is, somebody buys a subscription. It's like a life insurance policy, right? So it's not tax deductible. But if you were to need an ambulance, you would not get balance billed.
Right.
So the cost of that to us is maybe a third of that. Actually, less than a third of that. So we still net money, right?
That's pushing the risk back from, because I think we do the same thing with Longwood, where we pay X so that we don't get
you don't get billed.
co-billed.
Right.
And we feel like, it's to send them $250 now means we might save $600 for the year. It's a good risk.
Correct.
Plus it helps support the company.
Right.
So we like to do that. And it seems like every EMS in the county is doing something similar, yes?
I couldn't swear to it, but I think almost all, not all, is
Okay.
my understanding, but almost all the agencies have some kind of subscription program. So we have tried to put this information in kind of sound bites and little bits and pieces in our different subscription mailers. Thank you for inviting me to do this, for being I think you call us your first guinea pig.
Yes.
I will live up to that.
Well, I knew you would be tolerant. We've known each other for a while.
I offered though.
Because I can't predict how this all sorts out.
That's fine. But this is an important issue, right?
Sure.
I mean, people want to know that if they need someone, someone's there, and we will always be there.
Right.
It's just a matter of figuring out, how collectively we want to pay for it. So, we have last year we had a pretty successful 20th anniversary 9/11 event. We also had the other piece of it was a health and safety fair. We called Thank a Hero, Be a Hero. So we had a lot of information from providers around the county as well as us. We'll be having some open houses. We continue to try to do what we can to get the information out there. But, most people are going about day to day their daily lives, and I understand that, right? So we're not going to get the message to everyone. But we hope that when we get a message to you or the next person, that they tell their friends, hey, did you know? Right? Because I think a lot of people don't know. So it's a matter of education. And much like trying to get the word out about things that the county would do, you could put it out 6 ways from Sunday, and there's always going to be those people who are like, I never saw anything. So you do the best you can.
What's the old metric from politics that you have to have at least 8 contacts to get your message in
something
through?
like that. And now, between social media and the newspaper and this kind of avenue, it's like who's watching what and who's right.
The audience is a big, as I said, the newspaper business is a mess and readership is way down. And that's a difficult portal for you guys. There's the local radio station that has a radius of about 3 miles.
Yeah,
so it's a problem.
It's a shame. It's a shame.
It's funny because we're in an industry in media that is struggling as much, if not worse, with revenue. And by the way, if you'd like to sponsor this show, contact me, Mike@chescotimes.com. You could help bring community conversation to the entire county. Anyway.
Well, years ago I worked in publishing
yes,
and print ads, print advertising was starting to go down the tubes then, and that was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time somebody said, nobody's ever going to pay for online content. Well, look at where we are now.
Well, unless you're a big brand, it's still a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, a smaller site like I can't have a paywall and have it be successful. I know the Daily Local News, because they're part of a very large hedge fund owned company, they have a paywall, and it really hurts their traffic. I know if you push them on it, their writers would prefer not, because they don't get the readership, and their print circulation has dropped because, well, a lot of the readers died. I mean, I hate to say it, but there's no one over age 50 who's really regularly reading a print newspaper. So they are structurally broken. Now, what should have worked, not to kind of get on my soapbox, but it's what I do.
It's your show.
True. What should have worked is that digital advertising and digital sites should have had a better cost structure, since you're only paying for the content. You're not paying for the printing, the distribution, all that stuff. I've owned print publications, and it's very expensive. It should have worked, but what we ended up with starting mid-2015-16 is an advertising monopoly between Facebook and Google that shredded our pricing. And I don't. And plus, we've had a loss of retail. Amazon has hurt. There aren't as many businesses out there to advertise. So what happens is, and this is, the Daily Local, this is me, this is any of the other news organizations in the county, we can't compete on price, even though my prices are really cheap, with Google, and it's set it and forget it. Plus you're going to get probably better search rankings if you advertise with Google. I mean, I've seen that from us. So they control the market, and we can't really compete fairly as we should be able to. So the model should have worked, and it did work for the first 5 years of the 2010s, and now it's completely broken. So we had similar problems in terms of where's the revenue. I've had to cut back on coverage massively because there's no money. I got to pay people. Reporters want money. They're funny that way, and I don't blame them.
Well, most people who do a job want to be paid for it.
I mean, I pity some person who has to sit through these school board meetings these days with screaming people, often not making any sense, and having to try to write a story on it. So, I'd have to pay them at least $100 a night for that. And where's that coming from? So that's the issue. Yes, pitch. Please advertise. Get more news. That's how it works. Okay, it'll grow your business, but it'll mean more news. It's good for the community. If you don't advertise with me, go on the Daily Local, go on the radio station, but do something, because news needs saving. Anyway, so what else have you been up to?
Me personally?
Yeah, since sort of getting out of politics. Do you miss politics?
No. You know what? I loved being a commissioner. I feel like I accomplished some really important things. And if I could interview for that job and that could be my job, I would be very happy. I don't miss the politics of it all. And it was, in hindsight, this is the perfect job for me. 2020 was not an easy year for me like everyone else. In addition to COVID, I was out of work. My mom was real sick. So, 2021, beginning of the year, I got a new job that I love. So I'm very proud of the years that I served as commissioner.
Then you're still able to give back. It's the kind of job where you really
are
doing something that makes a difference.
Exactly. And one of the reasons I ran for office way back then was because, I was working in corporate America and I was kind of tired of that. So this allows me to continue to give back to the community in some way. That's my life in a nutshell, Mike, since 2019, right? It hasn't been that long.
Right.
My son is 19. That's weird. When I first ran for office, he was 3.
Mm.
So when I put things in that perspective,
I can relate. My twins are going to be 21 in May.
Yeah.
And they're juniors in college, and they were toddlers when I ran for state representative in 2004. So, yeah, it is occasionally just.
It's kind of mind blowing.
Yes.
But that's kind of fun. I will tell you that we, I know I'm going to bring it back to this because you know me, I never like to talk about me anyway. We, during last year when the county was doing mobile vaccination units, we participated with that.
Right.
And I went to one of the standalone sites for the day, which was kind of neat to sort of watch what was going on. But our providers that actually went home to home, they loved it. They got so much out of it. It was so rewarding for them. And yes, we did get paid for it.
Well,
and we made a profit on it. So that was a good thing.
Even better.
But, honestly, it was a truly rewarding experience. So, it would be nice to see if, and I think this is a State Department of Health thing. I don't think it's a county thing. Could we bring that model to things like flu shots and, for people who are homebound? One of the things that we're trying to work on is some version of community paramedicine. That is not a moneymaker, but it keeps people in their homes longer, keeps them out of the emergency room.
True.
So when you think about it, it saves insurance carriers and Medicare and Medicaid some money. So, we're trying to figure out how we can maybe advance some kind of program like that in our service area, particularly with some of our senior living facilities.
That makes a lot of sense.
So, we have a huge commitment to the community that we serve.
Sure.
A lot of people don't know we're also a training institute.
Oh, I had no idea either.
So we do community classes.
I assume actually right here, right?
Right
This
here.
is the
So
room we're in right now.
Well, you're not looking around, but
No,
there's all
but
kinds of odd
there's-
skeletons and half bodies and mannequins and things that you can practice CPR.
Like, I was going to say, I
and-
see
yeah.
CPR training pieces
Yeah.
here.
So we do community classes that are, we get a grant from West Pharmaceuticals that helps subsidize some of those, so they're free. We do recertifications, not just for providers, but a lot of times companies need to have someone on their staff, depending on what they're
Right.
manufacturing, that has, either bloodborne pathogens or needs first aid and CPR. So we do those classes. And we are finally reinstating our summer camps. So we had a pretty
Tell
big.
us about that.
I will. So we had a pretty big summer camp program before COVID. And when I started last January, I said, one of the things I wanted to do was figure out how we can do at least one camp in 2022, because, the infrastructure to support all that was gone.
Yeah.
We lost a lot of our volunteers during COVID. So we're in the process of putting all that back together.
Right.
So this year, we used to have a junior medic camp, advanced medic camp, and wilderness camp. So this year, we're taking our wilderness camp and we're calling it adventure camp. And the kids will learn all kinds of things. They'll basic first aid and CPR and how to survive in the wilderness, how to take care of, you're out with your buddy and he or she falls and breaks their leg, how do you put a splint on that? Or they have a big cut, how do you put a tourniquet on that? So they were really successful camps. In fact, my son is a product of one, and it's funny because the only pictures we have are from when he was in it last time. So I'm like, oh, look, there's my little kid. So we have 2 sessions this year, July 11th to the 15th and the 25th to the 29th. And anyone who's interested can sign up on our website.
Why don't you tell us what the website is?
I could do that because that would help.
Yes, it would.
Right? So interestingly, it is not uwchlanambulance.com.
Okay.
It is www.station87.com.
Okay.
So our call numbers are 87.
Okay. Right.
So our website is
Makes some sense, and actually a lot of the
station87.com.
fire and EMS have similar, and sometimes they have both, but yeah.
Yeah, so.
Because the station number seems to have always been very important in terms of emergency
Yes,
service.
but John Doe doesn't know that.
No.
And so I feel like it really should be like uwchlanambulance.com, but right now it's station87.com.
You could get that domain and do a redirect, and it's easy.
It's on the list. I have a long list of
Right,
things
it's just a very
to do.
inexpensive, simple thing to do. That's the only reason I say, as a web developer.
I know that.
Help.
I should have thought about that before I opened my mouth.
Because, yeah, I have a number of domains that redirect back to Chester County just so I can kind of catch people who put the wrong address in.
Right.
It's a little bit of a trick, but it
I
works.
call you.
Yeah, it's actually pretty simple.
In conjunction with that, we also have a very active juniors program.
Right.
It used to be called the Explorers when we were affiliated with the Boy Scouts, but Explorers is their name, so we can't use that. So it's essentially the same program. We just brought it in-house. Once the kids get out of camp, they can roll into the junior program until they're 18. And they sort of double down and leverage what they learn in camps, or they can come without going to camp, and learn all kinds of things, up through and including taking the EMT class through our EMT program,
Right.
If they want. Now, we hope that our juniors will become EMTs for us, but the goal is to, at a minimum, encourage. We can't edit, really.
Freudian slip. Nope.
To encourage public service.
Right.
So it was going to be a good inflict, right? But anyway.
No, the idea is that it's a feeder program.
Right. So some of our juniors, we have 3 right now working for us who started in our day camps and are now, one's a battalion chief here.
Wow.
We have had some of our juniors go off to be doctors and nurses and, even tangentially in the healthcare field in some way. But it's great.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity for our kids, and it's a good group of kids. They generally do all of our standbys. So if you're at a community day, you might see your local ambulance company there.
Right.
And so our juniors do a lot of our standbys, and while they're there, we have a teddy bear hospital for the kids, and we have Boo Bear who has boo-boos and needs to be fixed, and little giveaways and what have you for the kids. And that's another way for us to kind of get the message out.
Sure.
One of the first things I said when I got here was, we need a mascot. So our logo is a Welsh dragon. So I just kind of Googled, red dragon costume. And I found one that wasn't Halloween scary. It was more like childlike.
Right, friendly, yeah.
And his name is Lance. He has his own TikTok account, his own Facebook page, and I think he's going to end up having his own Instagram page.
That's
but
wonderful.
the kids a few months ago did a fill-a-truck at the Acme over up in Upper Uwchlan, and Lance was there, and people went into the grocery store, came out and donated food that we took to the food bank, and then Giant gave us gift cards. So Lance and the kids went shopping to buy food to bring to the food bank.
Wow.
So we've been having a lot of fun with Lance.
Sounds like.
And the kids like being Lance, but honestly, the first Lance was our chief. She loves being Lance. So, we have a lot of opportunities for kids. And keep an eye out, folks. We are currently scheduling babysitting classes for when kids have off from school. So moms and dads, if you have to go to work and your kid has off for school for an in-service day or whatever it is, take a look at our website and see if we have a babysitting class. We did one, I guess, last Monday. The kids had off. We had 4 young ladies in here who got a couple certifications in babysitting, and they seemed to have a good time. I popped into the class and they were carrying babies. they did a little bit of a field trip to create a little babysitting bag for them and a little first aid kit. So that's another opportunity.
That's very cool.
And boys can be babysitters too.
Absolutely.
All I know is
my son took that training back in the day.
Oh, did he really?
Both. It was at the Y in Kennett, but
Okay,
yes, both
yeah.
of my kids did, and I think only Janet actually babysat. But Kenny got the training, which then he used as a camp counselor for years.
Oh, that's
up
great.
At Conrad Weiser.
That's great.
So
I didn't have any training when I was a babysitter.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about our generation.
Remind everybody again of the website.
Station87.com.
There you go, because it's video and people aren't sitting there with a pad.
It's station87.com.
So anyway, it looks like we're about out of time. Actually ran a little longer than I planned, but it's been a great conversation.
It's been a
First of all,
great
I'd like
conversation.
To thank you for this. Hopefully the technology all worked. One never knows.
Well, we'll find out.
Well,
When
anyway, if you'd like to sponsor more conversations like this, again, reach out to me at mike@chescotimes.com, and we'll come up with a package that helps you support more news, more conversations about Chester County. Again, I'd like to thank Kathi Cozzone for being our first victim, and hopefully we'll see more of this.
Thanks, Mike. It's been a treat.